ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतङ्गमय। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। Let us pray to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, the Supreme God Incarnate. Let us bow down to Him and pray to Him to lead us from unreal to the real, to lead us from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. Sri Ramakrishna lived the life of practical spirituality and demonstrated through his life the glories of spiritual life. He demonstrated through his life how really one could experience tremendous peace and joy. And Sri Ramakrishna showed how we should direct our mind towards God, the only source of real peace and happiness. Let us pray to Him to lead us from the unreal to the real, to lead us from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. Today's topic, the value of dispossession and desirelessness. It means that we should cultivate the qualities of dispossession and desirelessness. It is true, it is very difficult to be desireless. It is also true that it is very difficult to get rid of possessions. Well, that itself shows the great value of desirelessness and dispossession. Desire proves the value of desirelessness. Possession proves the value of dispossession. So, we are in this world to learn lessons. And if we learn willingly, you are sure to get real education, and certainly you will be endowed with tremendous peace and happiness. Here is Sri Ramakrishna, who has shown how to be desireless, how to be without possessing anything.
You don't have to run away from the world. You be in the world, but not be tainted by worldliness. Sri Ramakrishna says, it's all right to have some minor desires. They are not of much importance. It is not serious. But the serious ones, you have to get rid of them from the mind. And they are lust and greed. The greatest dangers one could face in this life are these two. One is lust, another is greed. You can see, you can observe how things going on in this world. How tremendous misery and violence and crime have been going on immensely in various ways, to the extent of ruination, all because of sense, for the sake of sense gratification. Man has become crazy. Because he has become crazy, he has lost the power of thinking. On the other hand, he thinks wrong to be right, right to be wrong. It's called perverted thinking. So, people have become masters of perverted thinking. Though they pose to be extremely intelligent, in a way they are proving themselves to be terribly foolish. But people have to realize that. Until and unless they realize, they can't get even any glimpse of happiness or peace. They are only theory, not in practice. You will never be able to get into peace or happiness in the true sense of the term as long as you are obsessed by possession and desires. There are innumerable instances to show us, to prove us that we should not pray to these two things, possessions and desires. But we don't learn at all. We don't learn, so we suffer. Very simple. Simple mathematics. And a famous story of Alexander the Great. He began to conquer one country after the other because of insatiable desire. He wants more and more, grabbing. No time even to enjoy the things what he had grabbed. In that process, how much crime he was committing himself. How many millions of people were killed and butchered and tortured. How many countries he looted. With all that, was he peaceful and happy? No. Because Swami Vivekananda said that when this Alexander was returning home with huge quantity of all looted properties, still his mind was thirsting after that. Still he wanted to become the world conqueror. What does he gain? Does it remain forever with him? Does he live forever to enjoy that? He has no time to think. His mind doesn't run that way. So he was returning back home. On his way back he saw a great person. He concluded him as great because that person looked very cheerful and happy. And he could know the value, real value of cheerfulness and happiness, because all the time he was constantly being bothered about the preservation of what the properties he had looted. All the time his mind was dwelling upon the wealth he had accumulated. So his mind was in terrible stress and strain. When he saw this person, carefree, totally, extremely simple, supremely contented. First time he was seeing such a person. In fact, it's not a myth. The whole thing has been recorded in the Greek history, which Swami Vivekananda found out in the library. So, he just came to him and began to talk with him, and he was so happy to be with him even for a few moments. He got a glimpse of, very minute glimpse of peace and happiness just by being in the presence of this holy man. Just by talking to him, all his restlessness in the mind were taken away for the time being. So he began to wonder, and then he began to tempt him to come to his kingdom, where he would be given all comforts. He can live like a king himself. There will be many people to attend on him. He doesn't have to bother about food. Everything will be ready. Just he should be there to give wise counsel. And it's a great prestige to have such holy man in the country, in the kingdom. So with that great ambition, he was showing the temptation. Poor fellow does not know that temptation is the cause of botheration. But the saint knew it very well. He just discarded it. He just smiled over it. What are you tempting? Do you think I aspire for your wealth and riches and comforts? Why do you unnecessarily trouble me? I am quite contented wherever I am, sitting on this rock, on this stone forever. I am really very happy than sitting in your palace with all riches and wealth. Because I have got the treasure which cannot be stolen by anybody. I have got that possession. So what do I care of the possessions which you are having, which are transitive? They come and go. Agama painaha. They come and go. They just hit you and go back. So I don't care for any of your comforts or for anything. So you go yourself and leave me, I will be happy in my own way. And you must know the king was not a saint. He was like anybody. You see, the kings always have the extremes. They can't tolerate even a little bit of anything that comes against them. Immediately they become swollen with anger. He began to draw the sword. I will kill you if you don't come. He is threatening him for the no fault of the holy man. But do you think he was afraid? He was totally fearless. That is another sign of true happiness. You can judge a person to be really peaceful and happy when you see him fearless. Here is a person who is totally free from all fear. He was not afraid of even death. Death was afraid of him, so to say. And he laughed over him. What are you talking about? You want to kill me? What a lie you are telling. How can you kill me, who cannot be killed at all? Then he began to quote the Sanskrit verse. Nainam chindanti shastrani nainam dhati pavakaha nachainam kledayantyapo nashoshayati marutaha. So this self cannot be killed by sword, cannot be wet by water, cannot be blown away by wind, cannot be burnt by fire. So, what are you talking about? And it just give a wild laughter. Alexander was totally taken aback. He came to his senses. Yes, that's true. Here is a person who does not possess anything, who is totally desireless. Even the best things of the world have been offered to him, he is rejecting. There lies the real peace and happiness. And first time in his life he is learning this lesson. Well, probably he might have become good later on. So, we have to very much understand how these things keeping people ever busy. 24 hours are not enough. Even 48 hours, 72 hours are not enough. Still, they want to be busy, 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 busy. They die in busy schedule. They die. So, the desire to possess more and more, even when that more and more can be of no arthi, not to speak of heavenly benefit to him. It grips him like a vice. There's a story in Tolstoy, the man in Tolstoy's story was offered the ownership of all the land he could run across and back between sunrise and sunset. And this man really ran and ran till at the last moment he fell down and died of exhaustion. He is typical of the vast majority of human beings. Why there is tremendous violence, war, fighting going on? Just for the sake of possession. It is mine, it is yours, it is his, it is hers. This idea of belonging, Sri Ramakrishna says, nothing belongs to you. Please note that. The owner is God himself. You are not the owner. The moment you realize you are not the owner, you will be happy. You will not be bothered anymore. So, you can see that in the life of Lord Jesus also, how he was tempted by the devil with all sorts of joys in the world, etc. All this I will give you. Like that the devil was tempting Jesus, but he rejected them all. I want nothing of these things. Even the famous story in the Upanishad, Kathopanishad, Swami Vivekananda always says that. Please read Kathopanishad. If you have not read any Upanishads at all, at least you read Kathopanishad. That contains the gems of spiritual wisdom. The pearls of spiritual wisdom are there. Pearls. So, there also, this young boy Nachiketas, full of vigor and vitality, full of inspiration and one-pointedness, well established in character. When he approached the god of death, seeking the spiritual knowledge, the god of death was taken aback. What is this young boy is aspiring for spiritual knowledge? He has not seen the life. He has to enjoy. Why he is talking about spiritual knowledge? That's how all our people also behave that way. Swamiji, let me enjoy the world a little bit. Little bit. When you go for little bit, it overpowers you. Everything of you is gone. Well, there is no way. That is the Maya. Veiling power of God. Otherwise, how the creation would go, how the world would go. World would stop functioning. So all people are contributing in a way for the functioning of the world. So, when Nachiketas was asking for spiritual knowledge, he wanted to test him whether he really wanted spiritual knowledge or simply he must have heard by somebody else and seeking that knowledge. So he began to tempt him. Well, you are a young boy. You can enjoy the world nicely. If all people have 100 years life, I will give you 1000 years. You can live for 1000 years. And all through 1000 years you will have extremely fine, good health body. You can enjoy the last bit of your life. You have all the things for enjoyment. Enjoy your life through your senses to the maximum extent possible. Don't ask for the spiritual knowledge now. First you enjoy them. The more and more he began to stress upon enjoyment, the more and more Nachiketas becomes stubborn. Oh God, why did you... Well, I will ask you one question. You answer me, then I will accept your all these enjoyments. Are they permanent? Then God of Death stumbled to reply. Because he knows they are not permanent. What is 1000 years? It goes like 1000 minutes. A person who is good health and who is enjoying the pleasures, he doesn't know the passing away of the time. And Lord of Death had to tell whispering tone, no, they are not permanent. Then I don't care for them. Why do you tempt me with all those things? I don't want them. Really I don't want. He had that stamina to say, to reject the things offered to him by God of Death. Because he had full of vigor, he had full of strength, he was in good shape, he was alert, smart, intelligent, pure-hearted. So what? What more you want? Finally Yama had to yield. Then he began to teach him the spiritual knowledge. That is the message of the Kathopanishad. You read that, it's beautiful, really. The more you read, the more you get peaceful and happy. Tremendous peace you will get. Many people, sometimes they would say, oh Swamiji, when we come to chapel, when we come here, we don't know. We feel a kind of joy and peace. Many people have told me. And I have got my immediate reply for them. Well, do you know why? Because this is your real home. Your worldly home is not real. It is not permanent, it is temporary. Your real home is here, temple. So your real abode is in God. You have to aspire, you have to seek Him, you have to get Him. That's important. So, Nachiketas became a great saint later on. Through him we got the famous Upanishad, Kathopanishad. There only we have that famous message which Swami Vivekananda often quoted. Rise, awake and stop not till the goal is reached. Rise, awake and stop not till the goal is reached. That's what Nachiketas did. He didn't stop. He was fully awake. He was not satisfied till he got the final thing, till he reached the goal. Atma Sakshatkar, realizing the true self. And there's a case of Buddha, Lord Buddha, who renounced all his kingly rights, birthrights, and he became a bhikkhu, a monk. Swami Vivekananda, another greatest monk we have seen in modern times. In the height of fame and honor, Swami Vivekananda made a remark, this nonsense of public life and newspaper blazoning has disgusted me thoroughly. I love to go back to the Himalayan quiet. His mind was soaring high, to the high altitude. He would love to be in meditation, because he really didn't want anything of this world. He didn't want name, fame, honor, power, position, that's all. Nothing he wanted. Because he knew nothing belongs to him. He doesn't want to possess anything. He doesn't want to desire anything. So he was well established in that quality. Nisprahaha, nirmamaha, Bhagavan says in the Bhagavad Gita. Nispraha, be free from desires. Don't have the idea of my possession, etc. Man forgets that his material possessions are not his glory, but his burden. They don't constitute an accumulation of true wealth, but are wearing out of precious energy. They do not add to happiness, but are a source of endless worry. The truth is that the less we own and have, the fuller and completer are we. Sri Ramakrishna gives a very nice example in the Gospel. A kite with a fish in its beak. The crows saw the kite bearing the fish in its beak. Thousands of crows chased the kite. And it began to go in different directions. It began to run, not to avoid the crows, but wherever he went, the crows would pursue and pester it. So the kite became terribly annoyed, and in great disgust, it dropped the fish. That was the cause for all the botheration, because the fish was there, all the 1,000 crows are chasing him. So then it began to rest on a top of a tree. The kite which had thrown away the menace of a possession was no longer molested in any way, and it sat calm and composed on the branch of a tree, unencumbered, but also unenvied and untroubled. The sage Avadhut saw this and saluted the kite as a guru, because it had taught him the value of dispossession and desirelessness. So, you have to give up what is considered bad. You have to be strong enough to reject them. So, giving up the things, that is the meaning of renunciation. Renunciation is in fact the measure of what is not the measure of what one foregoes, but is a degree of what one really is, what really one conserves. Well, a story is told of a saint. He was praised for his great renunciation by a worldly person. Then the saint returned the compliment and said to this worldly man, if you have renounced more, I have after all renounced, it is you who have renounced more. I have after all renounced the petty world in order to gain the abundance of the spirit. While you have renounced the all and the eternal, and are satisfied with the little of earthly life. If honor is due to be paid by the lesser to the greater renouncer, it is I that must honor you. This humorous hit brought home to the worldling how much he had truly lost as a result of his long effort to store up for himself treasures on earth, where they grow rusty and moth-eaten, and thieves break in to steal them. And he turned over a new leaf, and thenceforth strove to store up treasures in heaven, where there is no moth and no rust to spoil them, no thieves to break in and steal. And he realized that where one's wealth is, there will one's heart be also. The ordinary man is such a slave to greed that he is devoid of a clear vision. He develops a perverted sense of values. What is of no worth is to him the be-all of life. His folly is indeed so abysmal that it makes even God smile. Sri Ramakrishna has said in the Gospel, God smiles on two occasions. Once, when the doctor comes to a patient on his deathbed and assures his mother, saying, "Why, mother? Why are you weeping? There is no cause for anxiety at all. Don't worry, I take upon myself the responsibility of saving your son's life." Secondly, when two brothers are very busy partitioning the land, taking a measuring tape, putting across the land and say, "This side is mine, that side is yours." The sense of identity which man develops with things which are quite outside of him and quite foreign to his being is really an instance of the play of Maya. Instead of being self-centered, he lets his individuality link itself to 101 extraneous things of no vital concern to him, and he suffers untold misery in consequence. But a self-centeredness to the exclusion of everything environmental is not possible for anyone except a person of the highest realization. Only a Janaka, though he was the ruling monarch of Mithila, could command such an utter detachment as to be able to say, when news of a disastrous outbreak of fire came in, that it mattered not to him even if the entire Mithila got burned down, and could remain unperturbed at a time when all other people running out to escape burning. If then for the average man a sense of possession is a sine qua non of existence, and if possession is truly a bondage and a dead weight on the soul, a way must be found to render the possessiveness that is inevitable in life as harmless as possible. There are various kinds and several degrees of possession. A man's possession may be inherited property having come to him from his father and forefathers. The accident of birth establishes his right to it, though he may in no way morally deserve it. But custom and law lend him their support and help him enjoy that property. Self-earned property is another kind of possession. A man's talents help him to amass wealth, which naturally makes him feel proud and important. The world looks up to him as one worthy of honor. Well, there is a king who would say, referring to the state, "Well, I am the state," said a powerful monarch, identifying a whole kingdom with his person. The sacredness of individual ownership is very well recognized by government and society and religious organization. It is held to be a sin for one man to try to take away what belongs to another. He who lays hand on another's possession is a thief and a rebel and a traitor. And history shows us instances of unlawful possessions of today becoming rightful belongings of tomorrow. A provincial governor who rebels against the weak overlordship of an emperor and makes himself an independent ruler is styled a disloyal rebel for a while in history, and then is adored as the able founder of a new dynasty, and anyone who tries to dethrone, say, his grandson or great-grandson is branded a traitor and is charged with foul treason. In social philosophy of the extreme type, all private ownership is derided as a foolish, if not mischievous, institution of an unenlightened past, and the state is made the sole owner. Therefore, there seems to be no absolute and everlasting standard of propriety in regard to ownership. Theories change, principles get renewed, attitudes get transformed from man to man and age to age. At one end is an Alexander whose whole life's quest lies in subjugating the entire world to political subordination, by means fair or foul, by cutting Gordian knots if need be. At the other end is a King Harishchandra, who for the sake of an utter adherence to truth is willing to be dethroned, exiled and enslaved. The only sensible and worthwhile, the only right and correct attitude is that all things, all wealth, all property belong to God and only to God. This divine coverage to possession takes away all the sting from ownership. In other words, the consciousness of ownership must give place to the sense of stewardship. When we rid ourselves of the incubus of the feeling of ownership, and get into the attitude of God's stewards, we get the touch of the philosopher's stone, and the base metal in us is converted into the precious metal. We have got an incident in the life of Sri Ramakrishna. It throws a flood of light on this matter. It has been recorded by the Romarola in his fascinating phraseology. When Sri Ramakrishna arrived at Devaghar, which is rich companion, Mathur Babu, he saw in Devaghar, Sri Ramakrishna saw all the people were emaciated and dying of hunger, for a terrible famine was ravaging the land. Immediately Sri Ramakrishna told Madhur Babu that he must feed these unfortunates. Madhur Babu immediately didn't agree. First he objected that he was not rich enough to support the misery of the whole world. Ramakrishna thereupon sat down among the poor creatures and wept, declaring that he would not move from thence, but would share their fate. During the summer of 1870, Madhur Babu made the mistake of taking Sri Ramakrishna in the course of another journey to one of his estates at the time of the payment of dues. The situation was, the harvest had failed for 2 years running, and the tenants were reduced to extreme misery. When Sri Ramakrishna saw, he wanted to bring immediate relief to them. So he told Madhur Babu to remand their dues, to distribute help to them, and to give them a sumptuous feast. But Madhur Babu protested. But Sri Ramakrishna was inexorable. Sri Ramakrishna said, Madhur, you are only the steward of the mother. Mother means Divine Mother. They are the mother's tenants. You must spend the mother's money. When they are suffering, how can you refuse to help them? You must do so. It is a commandment, and it was a forceful commandment. It was a commandment given by a person who was full of love and compassion. So Madhur Babu had to give in. So, the stewardship theory of possession advocated by Sri Ramakrishna is the only solution to the maladies of life and to the ills of society. Where the conviction of stewardship is present, possession becomes cleansed of its corrupting power. To seek to be an efficient, loyal and obedient instrument in the hands of the divine doer is a way of wisdom and right conduct. When kingship was thrust on him, Bharat would not sit on the throne and reign. He placed Sri Rama's Paduka on the throne and stood by and governed in Rama's name, on Rama's behalf. He was a shining example of the stewardship concept of possession. Even in regard to human relationships and the enormous demands they make on us, the stewardship attitude is the most helpful one. Sri Ramakrishna advises us, always consider that your family concerns are not yours, they are God's. And you are His servant, come here to obey His commands. When this idea becomes firm there remains nothing indeed that a man may call his own. Think that you are but trustees and guardians of your children, whose real father is the Lord himself. Speaking pointedly about money and its right place in life, Sri Ramakrishna, who was an idealist but not an unpractical visionary, and had a high pragmatic sense along with a found insight into deep inner realities, he says, there is necessity of money, no doubt, in worldly life, but don't ponder much over it and other material gains. Contentment with what comes of its own accord is the best attitude. Don't be anxious to hold. Those who dedicate their very life and soul to Him, those who are His devotees and have taken refuge in Him, can never think of such worldly matters. With them, expenditure is commensurate with income. As money comes into their hands in one way, it is spent in another. Someone asked Sri Ramakrishna, Sir, may I try to earn a larger income? Sri Ramakrishna replied, Yes, you mean to devote it to the life in the family based on discrimination. But take care that you earn money by honest means. For it is not earning money, but the service of the Lord that is your aim, and wealth devoted to God is beyond cavil. And as regards earning money by honest means, there is Sri Ramakrishna's striking instance of the weaver in the story of the will of Rama. In the gospel, that story is there. Who, a pious soul, no doubt, carried on his profession and trade like any other weaver, but with a difference. When he went to the marketplace to sell his goods, and a customer asked him the price of a piece of cloth, the weaver would say, by the will of Rama, the price of yarn is 1 rupee, and the labor is 4 annas. By the will of Rama, the profit is 2 annas. The price of the cloth by the will of Rama is 1 rupee and 6 annas. And did this openness ruin his business? No. Sri Ramakrishna adds, such was the people's faith in the weaver, that the customer would at once pay the price and take the cloth. No bargaining or higgling of any kind, no tortuous dealings of any sort could be seen in this white market of the good weaver, in which even money-based business transactions were, like Shakespeare's quality of mercy, not strained but twice blessed, blessing him that gave or sold, and him that took or bought. When possession is transferred to God, a man assumes the status of a steward. Man's outlook and conduct undergo a change for the sublime, and even his sense of the moral and the immoral gets perfected, as it were, and a thief no longer appears to him to be a criminal deserving punishment, but becomes a legitimate claimant of what is just due to him. This is sacred socialism at its highest. Swami Vivekananda tells us the incident. It's a famous incident. The thief, he was frightened and he ran away, leaving the goods he had stolen already in a bundle behind. But the saint did not keep quiet. He took the bundle up and ran after the thief and came to him after miles of hard running, carrying the weight of the bundle. He then laid the bundle at the thief's feet, folded his hands in reverence, and shedding tears begged his pardon for his own intrusion, and begged hard that the goods might be accepted, since they belonged to him and not to himself. Thus had Pawari Baba's conviction of God's ownership of all property made him a saint. But the twice blessedness of the steward theory, to which we referred above, was also literally demonstrated in the Pawari Baba episode, For the thief who took from Pawari Baba became as blessed as the Baba who gave. And it was the privilege of Swami Vivekananda to know both the giver and the taker. It is not a story, it has happened, this incident. See, Swamiji was during his Parivrajika days. He had lived with Pawari Baba for a time and learned to revere him deeply. Later on, when Swamiji was once at Rishikesh, Swami Vivekananda met a sannyasin there. That sannyasin was looking luminous and of luminous realization. In the course of a talk covering the varying experiences of the two sadhus, Pawari Baba came to be mentioned. And the Rishikesh monk told the Swami, I suppose you have heard the thief who visited the Baba's ashrama to rob him his few belongings, and of how the Baba ran after the thief after picking up the stolen goods which the thief had dropped down in fear, and of how the Baba caught him up and implored the robber to accept the goods as his own by right, saying, all these are yours, Narayana. The Swami told the monk, oh yes, I remember the incident well. Wonderful indeed is Pawari Baba. And then came a startling revelation. Overwhelmed with the feeling, the monk of Rishikesh confided to the Swami, well, I was the thief. See, I was the thief. And the Swami was overwhelmed by surprise. The monk added, I saw my wickedness, and repenting of my ways, I adopted this life in order to gain the most priceless of all possessions, the Lord Himself. And he also told Swami Vivekananda of all his spiritual achievements after he turned from robbery to religion. And Swami Vivekananda had the great illumination that day. What is that? Sinners, after all, are potential saints. That's why Swami Vivekananda made that statement in the Parliament, each soul is potentially divine. So you have to feed your mind with spiritual ideas, organize thinking properly, and act properly. So whatever you do, it must be done with utmost reverence and respect, always thinking they are all offerings to God. If a person conducts himself that way, then nothing bothers him. Things come and go. So by worrying, you can't remedy the things. Worry makes things much worse. So the remedy of weakness is not by brooding over weakness. So we must always dwell upon spiritual ideas. Every day we must concentrate upon some spiritual ideas in the mind. Thought for the day. As soon as you get up from the bed, after ablutions, after initial prayers to God, take one spiritual idea. One idea a day. One a day. Like that, all the 30 days you cover with 30 ideas. But that idea must be foremost. You must be constantly dwelling upon that idea when you are conducting yourself in your day-to-day life. That is how we must build up our life. Then only you will understand the value of dispossession and desirelessness. Sri Ramakrishna says, Even if you have a desire in your mind, you can't get God. You have to be, mind should not aspire for anything else other than God. So, whatever you do, it is with the idea of getting God, realizing God. With that goal, if you conduct your life, you will really enjoy the life immensely, and spiritually you will be benefited very much. So always keep reading some spiritual texts in the home, then dwell upon it constantly, meditate upon it, and keep contact with holy association, and make your life blessed. With these words, I conclude my talk. Thank you very much. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvinavadhetamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. May the Lord protect us. May He nourish us. May our knowledge be fruitful and enlightened. May we not hate each other. Peace, peace. Peace be unto all.